comes a day when something inside you changes. Not because the world suddenly becomes kinder, not because everyone finally understands you, but because you become tired of giving your energy to things you cannot control. You stop caring about every opinion. You stop chasing approval. You stop explaining your choices to people who were never interested in understanding you. You stop allowing rejection, criticism, and disrespect to control your emotions. And that is when you become dangerous. Not dangerous because you want to hurt others, dangerous because you can no longer be easily controlled. A person who needs constant approval can be manipulated. A person who fears being alone can be controlled. A person who constantly worries about what others think can be pushed in any direction. But the moment you become comfortable with yourself, something powerful happens. You become free. Today, let us explore 6 powerful shifts that happen when you stop caring about the things that were never meant to control your life. There is a moment in life when you realize that seeking approval has quietly become a habit. You begin checking how people react before trusting your own decisions. You hesitate before speaking because you are afraid someone might disagree. You change your plans because someone questions them. Slowly, without even noticing, you begin living according to other people's expectations instead of your own values. But you were not meant to spend your life asking for permission to become who you are. The truth is, no matter how carefully you live, someone will always have an opinion. If you succeed, someone may call you lucky. If you fail, someone may call you foolish. If you change, someone may say you have become different. If you stay the same, someone may say you are not growing. You cannot build a peaceful life by trying to satisfy every voice around you. At some point, you must learn to hear your own voice. Trusting yourself does not mean believing that you are always right. It means knowing that even when you make a mistake, you have the strength to learn from it. You stop expecting yourself to have every answer before taking the first step. You become willing to make decisions, accept the consequences, and adjust when necessary. This is where real confidence begins. Confidence is not walking into every room believing you are better than everyone else. It is walking into a room without needing to prove that you are enough. When you trust yourself, criticism becomes information instead of a personal attack. You can listen without immediately feeling threatened. You can accept useful advice without surrendering control of your life. You can hear someone disagree with you and still remain grounded in your own judgment. That is freedom. You no longer need constant reassurance that you are making the right choice. You become comfortable standing alone when necessary. You understand that sometimes the right path will not receive applause in the beginning. People may not understand your vision because they cannot see what you see. So stop measuring your progress by how much approval you receive. Measure it by how much courage you have developed. Ask yourself, am I making this decision because it is right for me or because I am afraid of disappointing someone? That question can change everything. The more you trust yourself, the less you need external validation. You stop performing for acceptance and start living with intention. And eventually, you discover something powerful. You do not need everyone to believe in you when you have learned to believe in yourself. There comes a point when you realize that explaining yourself to everyone is exhausting you more than the situation itself. You explain why you made a certain decision. You explain why you became quiet. You explain why you walked away. You explain your intentions, your feelings, your boundaries, and even your dreams. And somehow, after all that explaining, you still find yourself misunderstood. This is where you must learn a powerful lesson. You do not owe everyone access to your inner world. Not every person who questions you deserves a detailed answer. Not every accusation requires a defense. Not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected. Sometimes people are not looking for an explanation. They are looking for confirmation of the story they have already created about you. You could spend hours explaining your intentions, and they may still choose to interpret them differently. If you continue trying to convince them, you slowly hand them control over your peace. This does not mean becoming rude or refusing to communicate. Healthy communication is important. If someone genuinely cares about understanding you, speak honestly. Explain when your words can create clarity, repair something meaningful, or take responsibility for your actions, but learn when explanation becomes self-defense. There is a difference between saying, "This is what I meant," and spending your entire day trying to prove that you are a good person. Your character does not need a speech every time someone misunderstands you. Sometimes your consistency will explain you better than your words ever could. If you choose to become more disciplined, people may question your distance. Keep going. If you establish boundaries, people who benefited from your lack of boundaries may call you selfish. Stay grounded. If you choose a different path, some people may criticize you simply because they would not choose it themselves. You do not need to argue with every opinion. Your responsibility is not to control how people interpret you. Your responsibility is to live according to your values. The moment you stop explaining yourself unnecessarily, you recover enormous amounts of energy. That energy can go toward your goals, your relationships, your growth, and your peace. Silence also becomes easier. You no longer feel that uncomfortable pressure to respond immediately whenever someone misunderstands you. You can pause and ask yourself whether the situation actually deserves your attention. Sometimes the strongest response is a calm explanation. Sometimes it is a simple, "I understand that you see it differently," and sometimes there is no response at all. You begin to understand that being misunderstood is not always a crisis. You cannot control every person's opinion of you, and you do not need to. Let your actions speak. Let your consistency speak. Let time reveal what words cannot. When you stop feeling responsible for convincing everyone of your worth, you become much more peaceful. You stop living like you are constantly on trial, and that is when your confidence becomes quiet. You no longer need to prove who you are, you simply become it. There is a certain kind of exhaustion that comes from constantly chasing people who are not choosing you. You keep reaching out, checking your phone, starting conversations, making excuses for their distance, and wondering what you could do differently. You tell yourself that maybe if you try a little harder, give a little more, or become a little more understanding, they will finally recognize your value, but your worth should never depend on how hard someone has to be convinced to see it. When you constantly chase someone's attention, you slowly teach yourself that their presence is more important than your peace. You begin accepting less than you deserve because you are afraid that asking for more might make them leave. You tolerate inconsistency because you remember the few moments when they made you feel important. This is where you need to become honest with yourself. Love should not feel like a constant audition. Friendship should not require you to repeatedly prove that you deserve a place in someone's life. And genuine connection should not leave you wondering every day whether the other person actually wants you there. There will always be moments when people become busy, distant, or distracted. Not every change in communication means someone no longer cares, but patterns matter. If you are always the one initiating, always the one apologizing, always the one repairing, and always the one trying to keep the connection alive, eventually you have to stop and observe, are you building a relationship or are you carrying one? Walking away does not mean you stopped caring. Sometimes it means you finally started caring about yourself too. You can love someone and still accept that they are not capable of giving you what you need. You can appreciate the memories and still choose a different future. You can wish someone well without continuing to chase their attention. The moment you stop chasing, something becomes clear. You discover who reaches for you when you stop reaching first. You discover who notices your absence. You discover who values your presence without needing constant reminders. And most importantly, you discover yourself. You realize that being alone is not the same as being unwanted. Sometimes solitude gives you the space to rebuild the confidence you lost while trying to earn someone else's attention. Do not confuse being needed with being valued. Someone may need your attention, your help, your emotional support, or your constant availability without truly respecting you. Real connection is different. It has effort from both sides. So stop running after people who repeatedly make you question your place in their life. Give people the freedom to choose. And then pay attention to what they choose. If they step toward you, meet them with honesty. If they step away, do not destroy yourself trying to pull them back. Your life becomes lighter when you stop forcing what is not naturally flowing. You are not here to convince someone to love you. You are here to build a life where love, respect, and connection are mutual. The right people will not require you to abandon yourself just to keep them. One of the greatest forms of strength is learning that you do not have to react to everything that happens around you. The world will constantly give you reasons to become angry, defensive, frustrated, or distracted. Someone will say something disrespectful. Someone will misunderstand you. Someone will criticize your choices. Someone may intentionally try to provoke you just to see how you respond, but you do not have to give every situation access to your emotions. The moment something happens, there is usually a small space between what happened and what you choose to do next. That space may only last a few seconds, but it contains your power. Most people react before they think. They answer an insult with another insult. They send an emotional message. They make decisions while angry and regret them later. Strength begins when you learn to pause, take a breath, step back, observe what is happening without immediately becoming part of the chaos. Ask yourself, does this deserve my energy? That question can save you from countless unnecessary battles. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every accusation deserves a defense. Not every person deserves access to your attention. Sometimes people provoke you because they want a reaction. When you react exactly as they expected, they gain control over your emotional state. But when you remain calm, you take that control back. Being calm does not mean being weak. It does not mean allowing people to disrespect you or refusing to stand up for yourself. It means choosing your response instead of allowing someone else's behavior to choose it for you. There is a difference between responding and reacting. A reaction is automatic. A response is intentional. When you respond, you think about the consequences. You consider whether your words will solve the problem or simply create another one. You understand that winning an argument is not always the same as winning in life. Sometimes walking away is more powerful than proving your point. Sometimes silence protects your dignity better than 1,000 words. Sometimes the strongest answer is simply refusing to participate in unnecessary drama. As you develop this discipline, people may notice that you are different. Things that once triggered you no longer control you. Criticism becomes easier to hear. Difficult conversations become easier to navigate. Other people's moods stop determining your mood. You become harder to manipulate because your emotions are no longer available on demand. This is where inner freedom begins. You cannot control what people say. You cannot control how they behave. You cannot control whether they understand you, but you can control what you give your attention to. Your attention is one of your most valuable resources. Do not spend it on every argument, every opinion, every insult, or every piece of drama. Protect your peace. Pause before responding. Choose your battles carefully, and remember that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is not the loudest one. It is the person who remains calm enough to choose what deserves a reaction and what does not. One of the deepest forms of freedom begins when you stop being terrified of losing things. For many people, the fear of loss quietly controls their entire life. They stay in situations that make them unhappy because they are afraid of being alone. They tolerate disrespect because they fear someone might leave. They hold on to old relationships, old identities, and old habits simply because the unknown feels more frightening than the familiar. But when you become comfortable with letting go, something changes inside you. You realize that losing something does not always mean losing yourself. Sometimes you lose a person and find your peace. Sometimes you lose an opportunity and discover a better direction. Sometimes a door closes because you were never meant to remain in that room forever. The problem is that fear often makes us hold tighter when we should be releasing. We think, what if I never find someone like this again? What if I fail without them? What if I regret leaving? These questions can keep you trapped for years. But ask yourself a different question. What is staying here costing me? Sometimes the cost of holding on is much greater than the pain of letting go. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop forcing something to remain when its purpose in your life may already be finished. There is tremendous strength in accepting reality. You cannot force someone to love you. You cannot force someone to respect you. You cannot force an opportunity to appear. You cannot force the past to become different. The more you fight reality, the more exhausted you become. But when you accept what you cannot change, your energy becomes available for what you can build next. This is why becoming comfortable with loss makes you powerful. You stop begging, you stop chasing. You stop negotiating against your own dignity. You begin understanding that you can survive endings. You have survived difficult moments before. You have experienced disappointment before. You have lost people, opportunities, plans, and versions of yourself, and somehow you are still here. That means you are stronger than you think. Do not confuse attachment with love. Sometimes we hold on to something simply because we are afraid of what life will look like without it. But growth often requires empty space. You cannot welcome something new while desperately clinging to what has already ended. Let people leave when they choose to leave. Let situations end when they have reached their natural conclusion. Let old versions of yourself disappear when they no longer represent who you are becoming. You do not need to chase everything that walks away from you. Sometimes walking away is not defeat, it is acceptance. And once you understand that you can lose something without losing yourself, fear begins to lose its grip. You become calmer, you become more selective. You become less desperate to hold on to what does not belong. You start choosing peace over attachment, self-respect over fear, and growth over familiarity. That is when letting go stops feeling like weakness. It becomes an act of strength. A great deal of suffering comes from spending your energy on things you were never meant to control. You worry about what people think of you, whether someone will approve of your choices, what might happen tomorrow, or why something happened in the past. You replay conversations in your mind, imagine different outcomes, and create problems that may never even happen. But no matter how much you think about these things, you cannot control them. You cannot control another person's opinion. You cannot control someone's behavior. You cannot control whether someone understands your intentions. You cannot control the past, and you cannot control every outcome in your life. The sooner you accept this, the lighter your mind becomes. Acceptance does not mean giving up. It means recognizing where your responsibility ends. Your responsibility is to control what belongs to you. Your choices, your habits, your attitude, your effort, your boundaries, and the way you respond to difficult situations, everything else must be released. Imagine how much energy you would have if you stopped trying to manage everyone's perception of you. Instead of wondering, what are they thinking about me? You could ask, what kind of person am I choosing to become? Instead of worrying, what if everything goes wrong? You could ask, what can I do today to prepare myself? Instead of replaying the past, you could ask, what can this experience teach me? The questions you ask determine where your attention goes. And your attention shapes your life. When you constantly focus on things outside your control, you become emotionally exhausted. You give your peace to people who may not even realize they are taking it. One person's opinion can ruin your entire day. One unanswered message can create hours of overthinking. One mistake from the past can keep you trapped in regret, but you can choose differently. You can say, I cannot control what happens, but I can control how I meet it. That mindset creates resilience. If someone misunderstands you, remain honest. If someone rejects you, keep moving. If something fails, learn. If plans change, adapt. If the past cannot be changed, stop using today's energy to fight yesterday. This does not mean you will never feel disappointed, angry, or afraid. You are human. Emotions will come. The goal is not to eliminate them. The goal is to stop allowing temporary emotions to control permanent decisions. Protect your attention like it matters, because it does. Not everything deserves your reaction. Not every problem deserves hours of thought. Not every person deserves access to your mental space. When you begin focusing only on what you can influence, something remarkable happens. Your mind becomes quieter, your decisions become clearer, your confidence becomes stronger. You stop trying to control the world and start mastering yourself, and that is where real power begins. The person who understands what is within their control and peacefully releases what is not becomes difficult to disturb. They do not need life to be perfect. They simply trust themselves to handle whatever comes next.